I now welcome you to stay for Elon's presentation, and we will leave time at the end for questions to be answered. During the course of our presentation today, we may discuss our business outlook and make other forward-looking statements. Such statements are predictions based on our current expectations. Actual events or results could differ materially due to a number of risks and uncertainties, including those disclosed in our most recent Form 10-Q filed with the SEC. Such forward-looking statements represent our views as of today, should not be relied on thereafter, and we disclaim any obligation to update them after today. With that, please welcome our CEO, Elon Musk, and also JB Straubel, our CTO.
So, hey everyone, welcome to the shareholders meeting. We start off this by just thanking everyone for believing in Tesla and putting your money and your faith in the company. We're always super appreciative of that. The only reason that Tesla is live at all is because of people like yourself and the customers that took a chance on buying a new product from a new company. So thank you. So let's see, what we're going to do today, which is a little different from what we've done in the past, is just go through the Tesla history. So starting from the beginning and then adding, coming to present day and then talking about the future, which I think people know like little bits and pieces about, but I think it's important to explore the history and the motivations and the decisions along the way, so that people understand like what is Tesla all about? What does Tesla mean? Like why are we doing these things? And the decisions of the past inform the decisions and motivations of the future. And people have, I think, by now heard quite a bit about the master plan blog that I wrote sort of a decade ago. I actually wrote it more than a decade ago, but it got published in 2006, and it was always the plan from the beginning, because it's the only plan that I thought had any chance of success, which is to start off with a low volume car that would have a high price because we didn't have the economies of scale, and we had no idea what we were doing. Like how the hell do you build a car? No idea. It's got wheels, it's got a body, it's motor, like all sorts of other things that we don't know about. So being basically completely clueless, we had to do something that was simple and we knew it would be expensive because we didn't have economies of scale. And we couldn't even, a lot of times, even get suppliers to even call us back. They were like, "You're who? What? Never heard of you. Bye." That was the usual response from suppliers. And so we had to start off with something that was straightforward and that was going to be expensive and low volume. And then step two was to have a lower price, higher volume car. And then step three was to sort of finally get to something that was high volume and affordable, which is the Model 3 that we unveiled just recently, just a few months ago. And then of course there will be many more vehicles and models from Tesla in the future. But the Tesla master plan is really just kind of like a very limited perspective on Tesla, and it's really, I think, worth going into a more detailed look at the history and the decisions and motivations, and most importantly, I think I really want people to understand like the decisions we've made along the way. We've really always tried to do the right thing. We really care about that, and when we make mistakes, it's just because we're being foolish or stupid or whatever, but it's really always made with the right motivations, and it's never meant to be sort of something that we don't. We say the things that we believe, even when sometimes those things we believe are delusional. So we're going to do a look into the history of Tesla, and I'd like to welcome JB to the co-founder JB. So today. And we're going to bring in a number of people that were at Tesla from the very beginning, kind of just to tell anecdotes and stories. And this may go on for a while, so if you find yourself getting bored, I won't be offended if you want to leave. And so this may go on for a while, and then we're going to have a Q&A and try to get to all the substantive Q&A stuff. And go as long as as people really want to go. So look into the long and somewhat sort of soap opera-like history of Tesla. I mean, there are many episodes to the soap opera. It's like a multi-season situation. So really, even this history is, it's really glossing over a lot of things, but I think we'll still give people a really good sense for how things started out, what led from one thing to the next, why did we do this versus that, and just understand really like what happened, because there's a lot out there that some of it's correct, some of it's false, or some of it's quite patchy. But I think hearing it from the people on the ground at the time is really helpful. So the way things really started out was with the AC Propulsion T0. So AC Propulsion is a little company in Southern California that deserves a huge amount of credit and doesn't get enough credit. So we really want to give them just a ton of credit for the concept of doing an electric sports car.
Yeah, in fact, my first ride in an electric vehicle was in a car that Alan Cocconi, who was the principal engineer and one of the founders of AC Propulsion, built. And I was back in college still at the time. But that's part of what convinced me that EVs had such an amazing potential and such an amazing future. And I think, as Elon said, they deserve a lot of credit for having laid the technology foundation, very early on for what this next generation of EVs could actually do.
Yeah, exactly. So the AC Propulsion T0 was a lithium-ion powered electric car using cylindrical cells. They actually started off with it being lead acid and then upgraded it to lithium-ion cells early in 2003. I think it was early 2003, approximately then. And the specs for the T0 were very similar to the specs for the Roadster. So it had a roughly 250-mile range, roughly 4 seconds 0 to 60 time, and a lot of the specs were quite similar to the Roadster where we commercialized it. It did have some drawbacks, like it did not have a roof or doors, or any safety systems.
Any airbags.
Or airbags. And the battery was air-cooled instead of liquid-cooled, so it would overheat very quickly. So it was certainly not something that you could sell to the general public. And it also, the production cost of a T0 was, I think, basically like $300,000 or $400,000, like really, really high. But the basic concept and capabilities were demonstrated by AC Propulsion well before Tesla was created. So I'd just like to, frankly, just give them a round of applause for that. It was like, so I mean, like I said, they deserve a ton of credit and don't get enough. And in fact, in 2003, JB and I had lunch basically in LA, taking El Segundo. At the lunch, we sort of ended up talking about EVs. It was, I'm not sure how the lunch exactly got set up, but
I think I was trying to get you to invest in an electric airplane.
Yeah. Electric airplanes. How intriguing. Still dying to do that. Um, so, um, so the lunch that we had in 2003 was really ultimately what led to Tesla as it is today. And in that lunch, I mentioned to JB that, yeah, I'd been interested in electric cars since I was a teenager, and thought that was really what cars should be from a fundamental physics standpoint. Like, it's super obvious from a physics standpoint that electric cars are the right way to go. And I obviously believe that very strongly. And in the future, people will look back at the era of gasoline cars in the same way they will look back on steam engines. Like, it was interesting, it's quaint, it's interesting, but it was sort of like a phase, and then really electric is the way. I'd actually originally come out to Silicon Valley to do a PhD at Stanford in advanced energy storage technologies for electric vehicles, with the idea of potentially focusing on ultracapacitors with high energy density as a potential solution. And then ended up putting that on hold to start an internet company, Zip2, and then co-found another one, PayPal, and then finally, after all that, kind of like, okay, time to get back to electric vehicles. So sort of circled back to that, and JV, I think, had sort of maybe a slightly less circuitous path, but you were doing like Rosen Motors.
Yeah, I was trying to build hybrid electric cars with gas turbines and a flywheel, which was kind of an ill-fated idea, but batteries weren't as good as they were at this point. Turns out containing a flywheel in a moving car is not a very good idea.
Tricky.
But even more recently than that, I had started spending more time experimenting and understanding lithium-ion batteries, which were sort of brand new in the early 2000s. They were just coming on the scene for laptops and other electronic devices. And I had gotten to know AC Propulsion. I had, coming out of school, followed them for a long time and actually thought about going to work there, but it seemed like a little bit of a shaky enterprise. And but they were doing some amazing work and really interesting learnings with lithium-ion batteries. So I was spending quite a bit of time trying to figure out how could we adapt lithium-ion technology into a much larger pack to take vehicles long distances.
Yeah, and it kind of makes sense. Like when GM did the EV1, initially with lead-acid batteries, it had a range of about 60 miles. Lithium-ion has 4 times the energy density, these days more than 4 times the energy density of lead-acid. And so just basically, if you just replace the battery pack, you go from a 60-mile range to maybe a 240-mile range. So really, like, the basic math was pretty obvious, but despite it being fairly obvious, nobody was doing electric cars. In fact, at the time, in sort of 2003, 2004 timeframe, electric cars had gotten sort of a really bad reputation, and the industry, the auto industry, had concluded that electric cars were a waste of time and basically couldn't make a compelling electric car. And even if you did make a great electric car, people wouldn't buy it because they love gasoline so much. So like, okay. Anyway, so I got based on JV's recommendation, a test ride in AC Propulsion's T0 in 2003, and I was like, wow, this is awesome. And I tried my hardest to convince AC Propulsion to commercialize the T0. I mean, I tried. I can be pretty persistent about these things, and I was like, guys, you've got to show the world that this is like real, and prove to the industry that they're wrong about electric cars. So I was hounding like Dan and Al, like, guys, come on, just commercialize the T0. And then it's like, okay, look, if you want to commercialize T0, can you at least make one for me? Like, no, they don't want to do that. Okay. Like, can you convert my current car to an EV? No. Okay. Then finally, it was like, I was like, okay, look, guys, if you're sure you don't want to commercialize, you don't want to do a commercial version of an electric sports car, do you mind if I do that? And they're like, no, that's cool. Yeah, we're cool with that. So then they, so my initial plan was just basically to just get together with JB and say, hey, JB, let's form a company and essentially commercialize the T0 concept and create an electric sports car. And then the AC Propulsion guy said, well, there's some other groups that are also interested in doing the same thing. Why don't you team up with them? And so that's when we teamed up with Martin, Mark, and Ian and created Tesla. So that's sort of kind of how it happened. But I think it is important to emphasize, when we created Tesla, it wasn't from the standpoint of hey, this is a great way to make money, It was when I told my friends about this, they're like, you're crazy. How much money do you plan to lose? Not will you lose money. How much money are you planning to lose?
It was a pretty crazy idea. I was trying to convince all my friends to join and come and work at the company, and even some people that were building electric cars didn't want to come and join because they thought it was too risky. So it's hard to understate how untrendy electric cars were at that time. Everything was focused on the internet and no hardware companies, nothing even remotely like building a whole car.
Yeah, I mean, basically, in 2004, the idea of starting a car company was considered extremely stupid. And then the idea of creating an electric car company was like stupidity squared. It's like, wow, that's dumb. Okay. And so I'm a big believer in don't ask investors to invest if their money if you're not prepared to invest your money. I really believe in the opposite philosophy of other people's money. It's it just doesn't seem right to me that that if you ask other people to invest that you shouldn't also invest. And in my opinion of the success of Tesla at that point was so low, I thought maybe optimistically we had a 10% chance of success. So I actually put, it's essentially 99% or thereabouts of the Series A was money that I made from PayPal. And just because I'd rather lose my money than any of my friends' money or investors' money. And I thought, wow, this is really probably not going to work. And if I lose the money, it's not the end of the world. And so the beginning investment was really just all me, not from the standpoint of oh, this is a great way to make money, but just actually, I didn't want to have it on my conscience that other people had invested and then I'd lost their money. And if they'd asked me what my opinion on the likely success was, I would say very low. So, yeah.
And even most of the early employees had kind of a similar mentality. I think we knew that it was going to be incredibly risky and the odds were against us, but everyone believed in the mission so much, and they believed in the possibility of the technology and the change that we could create, that it's worth taking the risk. Even if it was 10%, if you can make this much positive good on the world, why not take that 10% shot?
Yeah, exactly. So, yeah, I think we pretty much all thought, well, this is probably going to fail, but it's worth a shot. And because the big car companies had abandoned electric vehicles, it's like, man, if the big car companies don't do electric vehicles, and then the only option is for a startup to do electric vehicles. And even though the historical track record for automotive startups in the United States is extremely bad, if you look at, say, today, the only two American car companies in history that have not gone bankrupt are Ford and Tesla. Okay? So I was just getting the move it, get moving sign from the back. Anyway, like I said, this one's going to go long, and I totally won't be offended if you want to leave. Because we're going to cover a lot of ground. if you have other obligations or it's like getting tedious, please, don't feel obligated. So, anyway, so that was like the beginning of it, and like I said, we felt we had to create a startup car company because the big car companies had all abandoned electric vehicles and everyone thought they were dumb. And General Motors was in the process of recalling their EV1s and then taking them to a junkyard and crushing them so that nobody could ever use them again, which I thought was just a terrible tragedy. And people wanted their EV1s so badly that they were so sad about it that they held a candlelit vigil at the junkyard where the cars were crashed. Like, who holds a candlelit vigil for a product? Ever? It's a GM product. I mean, it's like, so like, I don't know what kind of wake-up call you need to say, like, maybe you shouldn't end that program. But if people are holding a candlelit vigil like it's like someone's about to be executed, then you should really say, wow, maybe we should not cancel that program.